Welcome, friends, to episode 181 of Color of Magic, your Magic Gaming podcast where we talk about all types of issues that affect gamers at and away from their gaming tables and computers. And, as always, I'm your host, Daquan Watson, along with my main man, Brian Allen. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. No major complaints. And hey, baseball season kicks off. For tomorrow for us, it'll already be going by the time you'll hear this.
That is true. If you're a baseball fan, now is the part of the season where everybody has hope of getting a championship.
Right?
That hope will be dead within a month for probably a third of you. But
Although,
hey,
in theory, my team, the Cubs, are supposed to be good this year for whatever that's worth.
dude, random, I don't know. I did not know you were a Cubs fan. Like, I don't know how I didn't know that, but I did not know that. I learned something today.
There you go.
There
We're
you
already
go.
learning things.
Yep. Before we get into everything, as always, want to tell you about our sponsor, Cardsphere. Go check them out. They are a great place to buy, sell, trade Magic cards, and you can do it at the price you want. You can literally name your price to buy or sell. It's actually pretty cool. Matter of fact, I just stuck a bunch of envelopes in the mail myself. I think it was about another 30 yesterday. So lots of stuff going out to people, but you should check them out. They're big supporters of ours and they're good people. So go check them out over at cardsphere.com. And if you want to support the show directly, you can go over to patreon.com/colormagic because you can get a shout out just like Brishan Miller. So thank you so much for being a supporter of the show. And if you want to get some merchandise and just have some cool stuff to rep us out and about, which is always great when we get to see that out in public, you can go over to colorofmtg.com/shop. But man, this is going to be a rough episode. So y'all are going to need to ride in because, man, we have a lot of things to talk about. But for starters, this whole TikTok hearing thing, and we'll get into the fallout from this later in the show, but this hearing really bothered me. And it felt a lot like when they had Facebook dude. He was on there. And like our politicians screwed up so bad that they made us feel bad for a billionaire. And I felt like, now admittedly, I don't think Chu is a billionaire, the CEO of TikTok, but you at least made us feel bad for a multimillionaire. They had this dude for 5 hours, which I think they only gave him like 3 short breaks in a 5-hour window under this absurd line of questioning. And it proved again that we have people making laws that have no idea what technology is. Like, they didn't know the difference between TikTok and ByteDance and Tencent and the Chinese Communist Party and what, like, they literally were just like, it was like if you were just reading people posting stuff on social media and it was just a bunch of like hot button catchphrases or whatever. They didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And what's worse is there were points where they questioned them, and then at the end of questioning, and they had their wrap up or whatever, they had a couple of lines they were throwing in there. You could tell they just ignored what he was being questioned on for the last 10 minutes. So it was like, what was even the point? Like, and don't get me wrong, like, nobody wants our information, especially as creators, as businesses, whatever, going to a foreign government, right? Nobody wants that. So we're not saying they should get like carte blanche to do whatever, but when you keep referring to the person sitting in front of you as being Chinese and they tell you multiple times they're Singaporean, how can anybody take you serious? Like, seriously. And then on top of that, he had already laid out a whole plan, which one they're already working on. But basically saying, okay, anything before this point that has questionable data, we're just having that destroyed. Which, by the way, by Oracle in the city of Austin, Texas, at an American company. But having it dealt with, and then all the future data and information will be kept on servers there that can always be audited, they said, that will get regular checks. And they're even going to go the extra mile and share their algorithm with Oracle so they could verify that nothing untoward is being done with it. Those steps would be light years more than every other social media platform is doing. And they were still like, well, we don't know. China could get this information. And like, bro, he's literally told you where it's going to be, who could see it, who's in control of it. And it's all on American soil, controlled by Americans. and literally didn't even matter. It's like it went in one year and out the other. And I'm like, why are we even? I know why we're bothering with these,
Yeah.
because it's all for show to try to look like you did something that you were right. But it also makes our government and us look real bad whenever you go through the effort of having people stop everything they're doing, come to sit in front of you for 5 hours, which means he was probably there realistically for like 8 hours, because you got to get there early, you hang out late, you're answering questions, blah blah, whatever, right? So somebody takes a full day with their legal team likely with them for you to not even listen to a word they're saying. And honestly, I'm gonna admit, I did a lot of research myself because I wasn't sure. You hear this stuff about China being able to get information from TikTok or whatever, and I know how the Chinese Communist Party works. So I mean,
Yeah.
like, it wouldn't have been that much of a surprise. But then reading up on it, I'm like, okay, they're taking reasonable steps. This seems cool. And then you're listening to the guy say all the things they have that you can verify, and I'm like, okay, well, that seems good. And then the end result is like, nah, but whatever, we still want to go after you. Like what? But yet we didn't go after Instagram, Facebook, same company, right? We didn't go after YouTube and Google. We didn't go after anybody with all these other things. And they're doing the same thing. Hell, there's debates that everybody was doing stuff worse during the election cycle. And let's be real, if this was about doing something about internet safety, which I think we all need on some level, especially right now with people finding ways to social engineer and AI and whatever, there are actual blueprints for this because other major countries use this. So we could just copy one of their things, but we're choosing not to, right? If this was about internet safety and what social media companies are able to do, we would lay down some rules for all social media companies, but we're choosing not to. And then the end result, which we'll talk about later in the show, is an absurd bill, which we need time just to rant on that all by itself. So, like, yeah, these types of hearings are becoming just a mess. And this is why we need some younger people. And I'm not saying they need to be super young, but we need some 30 somethings, 40 somethings, more of them in office, as opposed to people being 60 or hell 70 and 80-year olds that are holding a lot of these seats because they don't even know how technology works. And I'm not saying that to be insulting, because one day I'm going to be that 60,
Right.
70, 80-year-old person who can't program whatever. It used to be VCRs, who knows?
And
And,
hopefully
and
you won't be in Congress at that point.
well, yeah, exactly, right? And like, you couldn't even ask one of your interns. You don't have like a secretary or an assistant or anybody that you could just ask and be like, hey, give me the cliff notes on something so I don't sound stupid when I'm talking on national TV to a CEO of a major billion-dollar company.
And of course, like you said, that's even if they want the information. Like if you're just out there to score political points, you probably, because we know for a fact, it's been reported on that there are many cases where, like Fox News, for example, knows exactly what's happening, but they know what their viewers want to hear, and willfully discard the facts in regards to pushing a narrative. They testified in court that they knew the election wasn't stolen, but again, they want to hurt their ratings. So some of these people are trying not to hurt their chances of getting reelected. They know what people want to hear. They want to hear like China bad, TikTok bad, America good.
Yeah, that's rough. And I think the disheartening thing is it just means that even when there are real problems, we're proving again we don't have people in office to deal with it. So if we do have more security issues, internet issues, issues with celebrities misleading people, whatever, we don't have people capable of handling that. But we'll talk about that later in the show because there are multiple things that came up this week that need to be addressed. But anyway, I'm gonna let you have some time.
As we talked about, this seems like we hear some form of this every year. So I'm not sure this year whether it was worse or whether it was just where there was more reporting and we heard more about it. But the Game Developer Conference apparently was just a disaster. There are multiple cases of sexual assault, attempted sexual assault, people having their drink spiked. So far, at least, I think 4 women and 2 men reported having their drink spiked across the 3 nights of the show. And thankfully, everybody was able to get back to their home or to their hotel room safely. at least a couple of people are going to file reports with the San Francisco police. But this is ridiculous. I see so many, and that just kind of just opened the dialogue of so many people saying every year there are stories like this. So many women, especially, said that they don't even go to the event anymore because even though obviously you would want to be able to network, you want to be able to go out there and talk about your work and meet other people and engage in legitimate networking and career advancement. But so many women feel it's not even safe to attempt to do that in an environment like this. And who can blame them at this point? Again, not just women. 2 men apparently had something put in their drink this year. It's just the whole thing has become a nightmare. And this is supposed to be one of the big game industry events where we're supposed to be able to celebrate video games and the people that make video games, and again, network and kind of just hopefully make connections. And we got nonsense like this happening just pretty much every year.
I have to ask you, dude, like, is it just me or is it like we hear more things out of GDC than pretty much any other industry conventions?
It certainly seems that way.
Because I feel like literally every year there's something, and we're just like, that's now happening, or this is a thing, or like they
Yeah.
still didn't take care of this, or like this company did this really dumb, crooked thing, or like you're saying, these people got sexual assaulted or whatever, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this stuff doesn't happen at other conventions. Like we know stuff happens, but it just feels like it's
This one
so
really does
consistent
seem
for
like
this one.
it's completely out of hand, and it seems like nothing is being done. People aren't whatever whatever message needs to be sent is clear people aren't getting it, because every year something like this, there are multiple things like this.
Yeah, that's my problem. Like, it's one thing when we hear like, "Hey, this thing happened at say, I don't know, Gen Con or something," right? And it's like all based around one person, whatever. But then, like with GDC, it always feels like these handfuls of things happen.
Yeah.
It's rarely just one thing. So like that's tough, man. And I don't know what the solution is at this point. I mean, it feels like
I wonder how long they're going to keep having the event, because I just do a Google search on GDC and they're not telling me what games are coming up. This is
exactly.
what's popping up everywhere. I don't know how long they can, you know, E3 is in danger and not had it anymore just because there isn't enough interest in it necessarily, and yet this conference continues to happen every year with multiple allegations of assault, harassment. So I don't know how long any conference can continue this.
Yeah, and at some point, you're just gonna have to figure out something else to do. And because what's gonna happen is you're gonna get people who don't even want to be associated with the event.
Yeah.
And once you get to that level, it's gonna be hard to recover. Especially if you have a couple of big companies start pulling out. You get your Sonys and your Bungies and whatever, and all these big companies start going like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
y'all aren't doing stuff to fix these problems. We have messaging and missions that say, we're against all these things. We can't be supporting the convention. That's when you're going to start having problems.
And it
So,
feels like we got to be close to that.
yeah, I don't know, man. That's tough though. That's tough. Hopefully they get all that resolved and find at least a couple of the people that were responsible for the crap, because
Yeah,
sounds
they're
like there were quite a
checking
few.
cameras and everything, so
Well, all right.
hopefully.
Let's talk about something a little bit more positive before we get into the mess. So, why don't we tell people what we learned this week? Because I think we have some kind of interesting stuff to talk about.
All right, MLB The Show 23 has launched, and one of the new things this year is a storyline mode. Kind of, if you've ever seen the Jordan challenges in NBA 2K, it's kind of like that. And this year, at least the first part, because I think there's going to be more storylines as the year goes on, but the first part of this is actually going to tackle the Negro leagues, and you'll hear about. I mean, there are just so many stars that you were never able to hear about because they didn't get to play Major League Baseball, and so many cases of people where they even mentioned the storyline. Jackie Robinson wasn't necessarily the best player in the Negro leagues. He was the one they felt would be the most suited to cross over and play in professional baseball, because he was in the military, so they figured that okay, it's somebody he's basically a war hero. You can't you can't disparage that. He was married. That was important to them because okay, he's obviously got a stable home life, so we won't be hearing about any crazy stories there. Like even though he was a great player, there were multiple reasons that because if the first black person had problems or caused problems, there wouldn't have been a second black person for another 30 or 40 years probably. One of the guys actually, Martin Digo, apparently he almost broke the video game because he could actually play at all 9 positions at an all-star level. And even on the little cards they give you when you unlock players with basically their version of Ultimate Team, Diamond Dynasty, it'll say, like, okay, this guy is a left fielder, and maybe his secondary positions are, center field and right field. Martin's card, you'll say like, well, I think they gave a pitcher for his main position, and then his secondary position is all 8 other positions.
Yeah,
Takes
that's
up
great.
half of the space on the card. Again, you have to program somebody being able to be slotted in because nobody else can do that. I think
Yeah.
the most I've seen before is maybe there's somebody that's able to play 2 or 3 infield positions. Or like obviously Shohei Ohtani can play, outfield and pitcher. But for one guy to be able to play every position on the field and be able to play again, there are so many challenges to try to even make that work. And those are the kind of players that they had that in most cases you have probably never ever heard about. I can't recommend this game specifically, this mode of the game enough. And they said they're going to be more. So I'm excited to see who else is out there and I learned about because I'd heard of obviously for Satchel Paige, Jackie Robinson, obviously, but yeah, there were just so many great superstars that just never got the chance to play in the major leagues for basically because of racism. There's really no other reason.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this like a year ago, which by the way, I think last week I said something about 3 years. We're at 3.5 years worth of episodes right now. Um, but I mentioned this thing. There's a podcast called Black Diamonds for those people who hadn't listened to it, and it's narrated by the guy who's the president, I believe, of the Negro League Historical Society or whatever it is, and the
Yeah, he's the
curator.
narrator for the storyline mode,
There you
actually.
go. Yeah, and he's the curator, I believe, for their museum as well, or whatever the lead person is for the museum. But yeah, cool stories, great podcast. If you haven't heard it, if you just wanted to hear some cool stories, some a little heartbreaking, because of the
Yeah,
times or whatever, but some really cool inspirational stories from people you never knew about. Like it's really really cool to listen to that. But it's called Black Diamonds. You should be able to
yeah,
look it up wherever you look up podcasts. But yeah, that's cool, dude. Mine is kind of interesting because you've probably, if you've been on the internet on YouTube, you're kind of hard to not see Linus Tech Tips if you're a nerd, because I believe Linus has been doing this for 12 years now or something. Been around a long time, and he lost his YouTube channel, and it was taken over. And I believe he did a whole thing detailing it, but I believe he got a call at like 3, 4 in the morning from one of his people or somebody had sent him a message, and then they find out that their videos are being deleted. People are live streaming like some crypto scam stuff, to get people to go click on a thing. And they, to YouTube's credit, they did get on it. They were on top of it. They were helping them out. They had it pretty much resolved overnight, whatever. So that's cool. But people are wondering, like, how does this happen? Right? Somebody like Linus and his team, they obviously have 2-factor authentication. They've got all the different security things in place. But one of the things, and this is something I'd warned people about because I didn't know what the scam was, but there have been a couple of things recently where they've been trying to reach out to creators. They being the scammers, reaching
yeah,
out to creators and sending you things where you download a file. Like even one and I got one that's designed to look like it came from YouTube and that you got a copyright claim, right? But you have to go to a link and download a file, or there's two things. One will take you to a link, one will actually download a file to your machine and a zip file. But if you open that zip file, probably going to have a lot of problems in your machine. And one of the big issues, which is how they got Linus, which people don't know about this, is that it actually isn't about stealing your information as much as getting to use your information. Because you have these things that are basically what they call session keys in your browser. And these are good because they exist, so you don't have to log into every site every single time you go in, and it tracks what stuff you've already viewed, all that stuff. But the problem is with these programs or files, they are replicating your session keys. So now they can go to your YouTube and not have to log in because they can make it look as though you're already logged in on their browser. So now they get access to all your stuff. And then it becomes really bad. So if there's a warning to anyone, whether you're a viewer or a creator or whatever, do not download files you don't know what they are. And understand that any major company is not going to send you files just to download at a whim on the first communication or whatever. And I believe the one Linus said they got was from a potential sponsor, or they thought it was from a potential sponsor, and they sent them a thing to download. Like, I always ask questions. You go to their official website, do whatever. Then if you have the communications that make sense and it's official, then go ahead and say, okay, I'll download it. But yeah, downloading anything cool. Matter of fact, even when I got those fake ones about the copyright claim, I realized like I wanted to see just what it was, and I downloaded the zip file, didn't unzip it. I was just kind of curious what it is they were aiming for, but I couldn't figure out what the scam was by me having that other than just letting them access my machine. But that session token thing, that's way, way more creative and heinous than I even thought they would have been doing. So just a little word to the wise out there, watch yourself, because
Yeah.
scams are getting creative. they're they're not the way you think. Because think about it, right? Like, they know you've got two-factor authentication. They know, hell, or Titan keys and all this other stuff. Like, they know all that.
Yep.
So they found another way through social engineering, effectively, getting you comfortable, knowing how to reach out to you. You're like, oh, well, obviously this is a thing. I'll just download this file, find out what the problem is, whatever. And then you don't see anything. And now it's already too late. By the time you realize it, now you've got to go, you've got to log out of everything. And you can block it by just going through and mass logging out of everything, resetting stuff, even going back to like a previous couple days version of Windows or whatever probably helps. But if you don't know to do that,
Yeah.
it's a real problem. But yeah, let's get into the topics because, like I said, we do have quite a few things that are kind of tough this week. So, for the fans of the Pokemon trading card game, there was some very I don't even know how the best way to describe it. It was a controversial DQ, to say the least. And this is a tough, this is bad because we have to be very careful how we talk about this. Because we don't want to alienate anybody. We don't want to come out as though we're attacking anyone, that we don't want anyone to feel safe, right? We are acknowledging before we even get into this topic that there are marginalized folks that already deal with a lot of stuff. And we don't want anybody to have to sit through an event or be part of an event in which they genuinely do not feel safe. So I want that to be clear while we're talking about this, because this is a very, very weird situation how it went down. And we're talking about effectively somebody's feelings being hurt, though not necessarily being threatened, that led to somebody being DQ'd. And the situation, which you can read some different perspectives, and the guy gives a pretty detailed version of the timeline that I would find it very hard to believe that this is not accurate, especially when you see the other things you can read around it. They all line up. But this person, who, as far as I could tell, I think I found that he was a very young kid, maybe just turning 17, 18, something like that. Real young. First time in the top 8 of a major event. First time under the lights, under the cameras, all that. So he already has nerves, right? One, being a socially awkward gamer nerd, being a young kid, first time under high pressure, right? So establishing that, you're already going to be a little bit nervous and rattled. Seen it before, we're going to see it again. When he goes up to get on stage, he is stopped by one of the judge or staffers. Sounds like he's somewhere in between, but either way, an official, and asks what his pronouns are, which isn't a big deal, right? Him and his opponent, they say he, him. That's what they go by. the way he described it is he got a little nervous overthinking it, so he was thinking about a third pronoun, and because some people say he, him, his, or whatever, right? Or them, they, whatever, right? And he just couldn't think of anything, so he was a little nervous, and he's like, "Yeah, just he, him," and he kind of giggles a little bit, and that's it. And the exchange, he says that the guy looks and says, "Well, I use they, them, so it's cool, but don't be a jerk about it." And he says he didn't really understand, like, why he even said that, but he was like, "Okay, well, cool. Like, I don't have an issue with anybody's pronouns, right? That's weird." And he even said he only even thought about it because he played a previous event where he was at least on stream, a stream match, and because the commentators didn't know his pronouns, they just used they, them, and he had a bunch of friends that mentioned it because, just questions, and they didn't know if he had changed his pronouns or whatever. They thought it was kind of funny, whatever. So he was like, cool, just trying to make sure it was clear, went to go play. They get through a whole game, and then while they're between games, judge comes over, asks him some questions. Somebody gets into his earpiece, asks him a couple questions. They go over, talk to his opponent, whatever. And then they tell him he's DQ'd for violating whatever the policy is that they refer to, for basically not respecting somebody's gender or sexual representation, whatever, right? That that which, to be fair, if you truly were, sure, you deserve to be DQ'd. But the guy is literally confused. He says, I don't even understand. Like, I've not attacked anybody. I don't care about anybody's pronouns. You do what you want to do, right? Like, and the only person that anybody can identify in these stories that has a problem was that one official that he spoke to. And now I kind of have a problem because, one, anybody who's an official, you got to have slightly thicker skin than that, right? Like, I'm not saying you should be up for just being attacked, but like somebody awkwardly giggling or whatever about a thing like that, you can't let that be the reason somebody gets DQ'd, right? That's too far beyond the pale. The other is, if we're going to attack this, or I say attack, if we're going to DQ this guy for being socially awkward, like, how many socially awkward nerds I have dealt with over the years? Like, that number has to be in the thousands, literally. Like, hell, as well as I do, dude. Like, gamer nerds, we've all seen, we have friends that are socially awkward or whatever, right? Like, we know.
I think
So, like,
under the right situation, we're probably all at least a little, especially it's your first big tournament. I'm sure that was not even close to the first thing on his mind was how he wanted to be introduced, because that's something you think about because you've never been under the cameras before.
Exactly, especially if you're not somebody that has to think about their pronouns, right? It's not a thing that's even going to be on top of your mind. We should be better about it. Don't get me wrong, but I get why people wouldn't necessarily be thinking about it in those circumstances. So yeah, like, I'm looking back on this and going like, that almost feels like we're creating another level of ableism. You know what I mean? Like, well, now you don't get to be awkward when you come and talk to an official. Like, okay, then what? So yeah, I don't know. I feel bad for this dude, man. Like, he talks about how he had already had a bunch of social issues, even had suicidal tendencies or whatever, and he was like getting back to right and focusing on the game, and that was his like outlet, and he'd spent all this money, and he was hoping to qualify, winning a regional or whatever, and like, it's tough. It's tough because, again, I don't want somebody to, like, if you said something that truly made somebody feel uncomfortable, cool, you should be booted. But there also has to be room for a conversation, right? We can't just say like, well, that would be like if I'm at an event, I hear somebody make reference to black something, and I'm like, this person, like, I go get a judge and be like, hey, you need to go talk to this guy, whatever, right? And they just go DQ him. He didn't even get a chance to clarify what he was referencing, right? I might have just overheard something wrong. So like, I can't. It's tough, man. Like I said, that's why I had to preface this thing before I started going in on it, because like.
And unfortunately, judges apparently, I guess, aren't allowed to give their side of the story. And this is a case where we absolutely need the judge's side of the story to be able to make, any kind of sense of this.
Yeah, I found that too. I feel like I misread that because like it just feels almost wrong that your judges can't make a public statement involving a ruling that they were part of. You know what I mean? Like, I get it if you like, hey, our judges can't make statements where two different people are involved or whatever, and we can't give details about their situation. But like, I couldn't imagine being DQ'd from a thing that I've spent literally months preparing for to just like have be DQ'd and there be no statement, especially when
Although
the
I think
person who is
that's
offended is a judge.
I think that is kind of, I guess, now that I think about it, I can't remember too many occasions where I've seen in any competitive thing where I've seen an official release a statement. They kind of just, let the call or lack of a call speak for itself. So I guess in that sense, they model,
I
other
mean,
forms of competition.
we have done that in the NBA and the NFL when they be like, yeah, our refs got that rule
Yeah.
wrong.
But in the league, they put out the statement, not the official themselves. The official,
Sure, sure.
you've pretty much never seen a referee call a press conference.
But there's gotta be something. Like, that's hard. Like, I feel for and
Here's
don't get
probably one of a case where you definitely where this rule definitely hurts. But I guess one of those situations where there might be, I don't know, 200 Pokemon tournaments this year, and this might be a one of. More likely the only time something like this happens. So
yeah.
they wouldn't have addressed it in the rules and may not change any rules this time.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I'm just thinking about being in this guy's shoes. Because I mean, hell, we've all been blamed or had something misinterpreted or
Yeah.
whatever that, you had no ill intent or whatever, and just having 0 recourse, and even according to him, he clearly explained everything, and nobody disputes that, right? That he gave his account of the situation. Everybody agreed with everything he said, and then they still gave him the DQ. And I'm like, wait, so if you think everything you did was cool and you've explained it all and everybody says, yeah, okay, that checks, and then they still come back and DQ you, like, why did they even bother questioning you? So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting situation. Um, Hopefully they get it resolved. It's the one I'll kind of be lightly keeping an eye on to kind of see what the resolution is. Hopefully they give him a chance to play another event. Maybe they fly him out to something. Maybe he gets to
I see there's
qualify for the
apparently
future.
a GoFundMe that I guess is going to help replace his tournament expenses for this last event.
Well, that's cool. At least the Pokemon community is coming together for him. And to be fair, most of the Pokemon community I've encountered are actually really good people. Like they're really supportive of, you know, different lifestyles, if you have different genders or whatever, like they're cool with all that. Like I've seen very few people that had issues in that community, which is another reason I was kind of so surprised that they were so quick, to act on that. Cause it's not like a thing that seems pervasive in the community. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not like super
Yeah.
entrenched in it, but like from what I've seen, seems fine. So I don't know.
I'm sure they're having all kinds of discussions behind the scenes, I guess, on how to handle situations like this in the future.
Yeah, you gotta.
And they probably won't tell us anything about it, but I'm sure it's being that's whatever and whenever they have a judges meeting, I'm sure that's topic number one.
Yep.
Well, topics 1 through 5.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, let's go ahead and talk about this TikTok bill and get that out of the way. And I'm calling it the TikTok bill, but I guess it's technically like the TikTok banning bill. If you need to look it up, it's Bill S, as in Sam 686 is what I have in my notes here. And man, this makes me really uncomfortable. I don't know if you had a chance to look over it, but this this is like, at least in my lifetime, I have two incidences that I can relate. The first is when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be sensational, just follow me here. But like when 9/11 happened, we used that to get the Patriot Act effectively,
Yep.
which opened up the doors to everything being scrutinized. They can dive into everything. Security basically has no bounds anymore. Like you remove a lot of privacy, whatever. And then we had an issue with online gambling, right? And we lost the right to play poker, at least in the United States, to play poker on most major websites because that got attached to a port security bill. And for whatever reason, they decided, cool, this also is a risk, so we want to get rid of that. And now we have this thing with TikTok, which again, as we established in the opener there, that like they were basically saying, hey, we can play by all the rules and we can show you how we're safe. Yet somebody still wants to take a shot at this. So there's this whole like y'all need to read through this. And I'm not saying this is just scare tactics to be sensational, whatever. But if you are a business or a creator or whatever, if you get out of line, you could have everything scrutinized. And if they find anything remote that they think is unsafe, could be you did something wrong with a piece of information or data or whatever, or huge fines, possible jail time. Like it's crazy. And I don't even know what we're solving with it. Like the real possibility, and again, I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on here for a second.
Oh boy.
But what it feels like is some number of politicians probably have some type of who knows, like some type of people behind them buying them out for either the ability to remove competition or the ability to get access to information they would not otherwise have access to. Because, like we said, there is no reason for this to even exist. Like, we have literal blueprints. Like, other countries have already laid out how we can do this. But we've chosen not to do that. The actual CEO of TikTok actually said, hey, we can do all this for information on your soil. So you even have a second plan that we're choosing to say, like, nah, we don't want that. But we want to be able to get access to anybody's information, investigate anything we want if we find anything we think is remotely problematic, and then hammer those people into oblivion, possibly bankrupting some folks for what could be a common mistake. Right? This doesn't make any sense to me. Like I can't imagine anybody who cares anything about freedom, security, whatever, wanting to vote for this. Like this is bad. Like and I hate being that over sensational person. But this doesn't sit well for me. Like I'm really concerned about it. Now, admittedly, it didn't look like a ton of politicians signed off on it, but it was a pretty big number. It was still like, I don't know, like 16 people or something. So it was a pretty big number of backers. But yeah, I if this is the outcome of the hearings, I don't even know why we bothered doing the hearing. Like that, I think that's my issue. Of like this feels like this was already the plan the whole time. Like the
Yeah.
hearing just didn't
And
even matter.
that's yeah. And if we're perfectly honest about it, isn't that pretty much the case on most of these issues? When have you ever seen anybody on either side go, "Hey, wait, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm pro-choice now. You talked me into it." You know, that never happens.
Yeah, that's true too.
Everybody goes in there knowing what side of the fence they are on, and even though there's a hearing going on, they're looking, to try to they're looking to hear more things that reinforce the view they already have.
And let's be honest, right? With social media, you have a lot of people who have been able to make a living that wouldn't otherwise. There are people that get brand deals and sponsorships, people that have things that have been paid for, people that have paid for the kids to go through school. Hell, people that can't otherwise get a job because they're homebound or they have some type of handicap or illness or whatever, that they can make money through social media. Like a lot of these people could potentially have their livelihoods put at risk, either because they themselves can be brought up on whatever trumped up charges or whatever, or the companies that they are hosting their content on get shut down. In this case, TikTok. So like this isn't even just about the businesses. This is about all of us that view and enjoy all these things, that maybe make a video to inform some people of a thing or whatever. Any of us could now be at risk because of this, at least the way it read. So like I am not in favor. I don't know how you feel about it. Maybe I'm over sensationalizing or whatever, but I like even if it's 50% of what I think it is, I don't like it.
I mean, it kind of feels like the a technological version of the Red Scare, where hey, we feel like this is communist, and yeah, you're just not going to be able to convince us otherwise. For at least a lot of people up there.
Yeah, maybe that's a good example. I mean, I could see that. I mean, that's a good interpretation of how things went down. So yeah, it bugs me, man, a lot. I I really read it and felt really uncomfortable reading it. Like it just, and hell, I read a lot of things and a lot of people say a lot of things to me. But that I just went like, yeah, this is tough. And not even for myself. I'm pretty good about my stuff. I've run a business. I know how you have to handle people's information, credit cards, blah blah, all that. Like, but I'm thinking about everybody else that uses it every day, right? And how that could affect people's livelihoods. Or who knows? Like, you know how it is. Like once you get suspected of something or charged it, and all of a sudden everybody views you differently or whatever, and like that could be a problem. So like, yeah, man, ugh. I implore everybody, go read it. Again, it's Bill S686. I think everybody at least should know about it in case something like this does get passed or they make changes or you hear discussion about it. You should at least be informed so you know what it is. But all right, let's talk about some stuff on Magic Arena. In case you didn't know, there were two different bugs actually. One with the Ninja Kunai, which when you activated it, gave you, I guess the best way to describe it is pretty much all your permanents got instances of that ability, and it went off, which is kind of crazy. And then there was Citizen's Crowbar that whenever you destroyed something, destroyed all of that person's stuff, which was kind of crazy. So you lost everything. Both of those obviously problematic bugs were not intended to be used that way. They were that way for the better part of 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Wizards did get those fixed, posted an announcement that those were fixed in the most recent update, and that people who exploited those would face justice.
What they send it Batman to your crib? What does that even
that's,
mean?
that's literally what it said. It said they would face justice. I'm like, bro, okay. First off, please in the future write all of these different reports with sensationalism. Love it, right?
Well, yeah.
Like, like be as over the top as you want. Because reading that people are going to face justice is fantastic. Right? I don't even know what it means, but it
Right?
sounds so
I'm a little
epic.
nervous.
Yeah, I'm in. But the other thing is, we don't know what that means for real. Like that could be you get booted from the platform. It could be you get suspended for 3 months. Maybe whatever rewards you earned get
I would
taken
hope
back.
it wouldn't be the thing, like, because again, it's their card glitch, right? You didn't hack anything.
Sure, but I would say this. I think the first time or two it happens, you kind of go like, "Whoa, that was weird. Was that a thing or whatever?" Right? And then do it again, and you're like, "Okay, hold up." Right? This obviously isn't a thing that's supposed to be that way. But if you were purposely doing, like, you were entering events and doing it, which I did hear that somebody got their last two losses in an event because they faced two people that were exploiting stuff.
And again, with money on the table, like how
I get you, but I'm just saying, I feel like you know better if that's in the thing. Like you made a decision
but
that
I
you
mean, I don't feel like I'm responsible for Arena's cards not working properly.
I'm just saying you made a decision though. You knew the risk. Like you knew it wasn't right. So whatever. Like, and I'm with you though. I get it. It's there. You're gonna try to use it. People are gonna view it that way. Totally understand.
And how do you even prove somebody? How do you know this isn't the first time they've run these cards? How do you
Uh,
prove
they
otherwise?
would be able to look at the account.
Okay.
Yeah, because they can see all the history. So that wouldn't surprise me. Like they could just go back and say, okay, let's look at the last like 100 games, 45 games, whatever sample size they want to use, and see if they see the person using it. But if you're registering, like, and again, I think they're going to have some rationale of like, if you did it a couple of times, they're probably not going to care. But again, if you're that person that registered 2, 3 events and you were doing that a couple of times per event, you knew better. You know what I mean? Like you knew. And I'd almost guarantee you're going to be able to track it back because when people play against different things like that or those type of errors happen, people do submit a report to Wizards and they usually have some type of reimbursement or backing. So like if you paid 500 gems to play the event, they'll reimburse your 500 gems, right? So with those being on the record, they're going to be able to go back and even see who their opponents were. So they even have a shortcut to find a lot of the games. So yeah, so these people are going to be picked off. We just don't know what it is. I don't know if we're even going to find out because I'd assume unless one of the crooked people decides to make a big thing about it on social media, we probably won't know. But man, I'd kind of be curious because I want to know what justice means in terms
Oh,
of
I definitely want to
arena.
know what justice looks like. This is a weird thing to even say in terms of
Isn't that
what
awesome
justice
though?
looks like.
That they'll face justice. I'm just like, that's so good. Like, please use that language more often. I am in favor. Sensational language in like arena
Is
updates or
wild.
any game updates is fantastic. But let's talk about another game not doing so well. So this was tough, Brian, because you were a champion for multiverses.
Yeah, and I mean it's definitely a very fun game. Basically, kind of you call it Warner Brothers Smash Bros. And we found out this week that apparently it's technically still an open beta, even though it's been out for I think almost a year at this point. But that's how they do stuff. They're going to close the open beta until some as of yet undetermined time in 2024. Oh, and by the way, if you bought anything during this beta, no refunds.
That ain't
So,
coming back.
yeah, for those that don't know the history, as I said, it dropped about almost around this time, like maybe I want to say June, July-ish. And I think they're saying it's going to shut down 90 days. So it'll have been around for about a year at that point. And just kind of, it hadn't had any meaningful update since about November. There's been there's been a couple of tweets, and they've been, for the most part, it's really been radio silence since November, which for a free to play game, I mean, let's be honest, you can't do that. It's
Yeah.
free. You got to do something to keep people's attention. So it's lost on Steam, at least, because they're able to track Steam numbers better than console. It's lost 99% of the player base. I think the last time I looked, there were 600 active players on Steam for a game where you had to pay for the license for Superman, Batman, Rick and Morty, etc. That's bad. That's real bad.
That's tough, dude. You don't even have 1,000 players.
Yeah, and again, that is just Steam because it's not easy. It's easy to get console stats, but
But still, let's say that's 10,000 players. That's
yeah,
that's still not very many
again for
on a
having
worldwide scale.
yeah, for being Batman versus Superman and so on. Again, really well done game. It's just they went very quiet, kind of radio silence with the updates, and the last character we got was again November. That's Marvin the Martian, which really, by the way, is a fun character. He's got his explosive space modulator and all that, so he can push a button and turn projectiles around in midair. So it's a very fun character, definitely a unique mechanic, and yeah, he was fun, but that's kind of the last
Mm.
thing we got for multiverses. So yeah, when you don't, especially for a free to play game, when you don't feed the base, people move on. And sadly, as I mentioned, I guess maybe 3 or 4 podcasts ago, Rumbleverse and Multiverses were 2 of the nominees for the fighting game of the year at a recent awards show, and it's looking like neither one of them is going to make it to 2024. Well, Rumbleverse is obviously dead. They said they're going to try to bring it back, but
Like
they,
how I don't even remember even games that are getting shut down don't lose 99% of their base in the first like 9-10 months.
yeah.
That's
Again,
crazy.
especially with the Warner Brothers license, where you'd figure like this is what people have wanted. Warner Brothers Smash Bros. Come on, that's
Yeah. God, that's whew.
I'm gonna guess there's more people in that playing, for example, Injustice or Mortal Kombat
Oh yeah, yeah.
10. It's just by any stretch of the imagination, that's a
Hell, you probably
colossal
got more than
failure,
people playing a Call of Duty from 3 years ago.
right?
Like that's tough.
So just as you said, I've been because again, the game itself is fun, but free to play, you gotta keep feeding your player base. And I know I'm not optimistic that it's coming back because we've seen Warner Brothers doing a lot of cutting bait, a lot of smashing and grabbing, and looking Batgirl. All the numerous TV shows and movies are either canceling or pulling from HBO Max. That's just with all the things we've seen Warner Bros. Do over the past year. I can't imagine with any confidence this game comes back. Let's consider a situation where they might end up cutting whatever financial losses they've had. And I absolutely 1000% hope I'm wrong, but I am not optimistic about this.
No, I'm with you. I think the only chance, and this is a far outside chance, would be if they got with Gunn on the new direction of Warner Brothers DC stuff, and you made sure you rebranded some of those, got some of those characters into the game gets rebranded, and maybe you could do something first, second quarter next year. But I mean, you're also having to try to win all those people back that have already played it and left. Like, I don't know, man. They might just be doomed already.
Yeah, I mean, when somebody that's just that's already moved on to something else, how do you get that player back?
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to go crazy, like find every Warner Brothers movie and just bring every major character in, or TV show or whatever. That might be your only out.
I mean, I'm assuming that's always been the plan to have some kind of representation from almost every major Warner Brothers franchise. Which part of the problem with that is gonna open the can of worms you don't open. I would say probably the biggest Warner Brothers franchise that isn't currently in the game is Harry Potter, but that brings on a whole other
Mm-mm,
set of
mm-mm,
problems.
you ain't gonna do that right now. Uh,
Well, the sad thing is,
I mean,
Hogwarts
maybe.
Legacy sold really well, so
That being said, though, like I would have to go check the numbers on that because I saw like release week or whatever, it had all the hype people talk about, but I've not even seen a mention anywhere in a couple weeks now. So I don't know how hot that even still is. But I don't like. Is there something like? I mean, it's probably not. But I mean, like a movie like The Goonies or something that like you could get a character like Chunk in there. Like I mean, like
but I mean,
you
but would
know,
that really move it? Because I saw some people mention that they did put Stripe and Gizmo from Gremlins, which I love.
that's kind of cool actually.
But somebody much younger than me mentioned, I literally don't know who either of these characters are. And like, yeah, you
That's
got
kind
a
of sad,
valid
but
point.
I feel you. I feel you. But like I don't know, maybe there's
And
like an ET level license or something. Everybody knows who that is. Like I don't know.
they're sadly for them, their last big, movie Warner Brothers character was Black Adam, and it's not developer's fault, but yeah, that movie's a dumpster fire. That
Yeah,
franchise
yeah.
may have killed the DC cinematic universe. So through no fault of player first games, Black Adam just came out and set us up the bomb. Unfortunately,
Really, this is just an unfortunate part. I think for anybody who had Warner Brothers slash DC licenses, because I would venture to guess the next 5 years are going to be exponentially better than the previous five.
yeah.
With the new direction they have and tying every property in and having like the actual real life actors do voices for the animated series and talking about lining stuff up with the books better and like there's just going to be more cohesiveness to keep people going from product to product and that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might just be bad timing for them unfortunately.
But I mean, we have seen games like I think Destiny 2 had kind of middling reviews at launch. They've turned it around. So I mean, it's possible. I'm not sure I trust Warner Brothers to write that check at
Well,
this
yeah,
time
but
in
dude, let's
their
be honest. Destiny 2 didn't lose 99% of its user base on a platform either.
no,
Like
I
that's
don't
an
think it did.
unheard of number.
Yeah, that's bad.
That's rough. Like I mean on any platform, you're down to under 4 digits on users.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
With
you're in trouble.
Superman, Batman, Rick and Morty.
Yeah,
Those
with
are some of the
some of the
most
most pop
popular licenses in the industry.
exactly. Like some of the most popular recognizable iconic characters in entertainment period.
Yeah.
And like that doesn't draw, something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Another case of Warner Brothers just can't get right.
Yeah.
It's just
Well, all right. Let's have and this is one we knew this question was coming. And this one's one that I know some people might have a problem with or whatever, but I think it's worth discussing though. Is there a franchise or a movie or story or whatever that doesn't have a prominent black character that you would like to see one in? Because I don't know if I have one. But man, I feel like there has to be something though, you know? But yeah, I think this is the tough part for me. I think because now it's definitely changed. I feel like if you've grown up in the last, I mean, if you were a teenager sometime in the last like 2 centuries, I mean, 2 decades, like you probably don't have the same issue because there's been more representation and stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like having grown up where there just wasn't, I, and man, this feels gross saying, but you kind of just accepted it, right?
Sad, but kind of
Yeah, you
accurate.
kind of just got used to like, oh, this is just going to be one of those things with no black people in it or whatever. And you didn't, you kind of had the thought and that was it. And you didn't really think much of it because like, there's a lot of like, we've talked about it before, sci-fi and fantasy stuff as a whole where there's not black characters for entire series and books and whatever. Or if they are, they're literally like the smallest of bit part characters, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't really think about that, truthfully. If anything, I don't know if I have, for me personally, I don't know if there's a particular one, but I would like to see more where a good example for me was how they handled Miles Morales,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Where, because as much as, because don't get me wrong, I think the Black Panther was awesome, enjoyed both movies,
Yep.
but it was still about the black characters being African effective. It's not Africa, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like it's about them being African and indigenous or whatever. Or you get the characters like Luke Cage that it's about protecting the inner city or whatever, right? Whereas Miles Morales was just like, he's got both his parents, his dad's a cop,
Yeah.
he's just trying to do right by people, right?
He
And
does not have a hip hoppy walk.
yeah,
not
exactly. He doesn't
not
have a hip
too
hoppy walk, right?
urban.
Yeah, but that's exactly it, right? He's just a kid, like just a character that you can relate to. Multiple people could probably relate to him,
Yeah.
right? It's not even like his skin color is different, but he's just a character that also happens to be black, right? And don't be wrong, I think we do need to sometimes tell the stories of the plight of minorities in the inner city or whatever. I do think that's still relevant for storytelling, but that shouldn't be the only story you get to see the black characters in,
Right.
right? It should be like we're saying, like we got to see his dad as a police officer and trying to raise his kid right, and he's trying to go to school and do all these things, and cool, that's relatable. We can get behind that, right? That's somebody even your kids could look up to or whatever, regardless of what your background is. And that's a character you can like raise up and promote and whatever, and that's cool. And even Luke Cage is a great character, but everything about that series was, oh, well, there's possible drugs and there's crime and there's the gangs and there's this. And it's just like, okay, cool, we get it. But what else? So even in the series, I think they started out with him getting out of a prison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we went that far with the character. So just like,
But I mean, that is Luke Cage.
oh, I
That is,
understand.
it's stuck to the comic book origins pretty much.
Totally. But again, that's how a lot of black characters were written.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's my only request is just like give me characters that have more diversified backgrounds, more normal things that more people can relate to, and don't make it, for lack of a better term, don't make it so urban, as people like to say,
Yeah.
and just let it be a thing, just happens to be black. Because we talk about it, right? Like we've both been in those social circles or situations where like you're the only black person, so people assume a lot of things, and you're like, bro, I'm just
Right.
here to play cards like you are. Right? Like I
I'm
don't
just
know.
here to say, damn, and that was whack.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know what you're assuming is gonna happen here, but like, but hell, I've also been the guy, and I've told the story before where somebody waited forever to come talk to me because I'm the one in this whole ass Grand Prix that's gonna know where to go get the weed locally. Right? Like that should not be the assumption people carry. And I'm assuming this person had never dealt with black people or just assume like, oh, I need to get something illegal. I know who I'm gonna ask. Right?
Right.
like I don't know. But like, and be honest, any of y'all that know me, hell, you're looking at me for watching me on YouTube. Like, I don't look like the dude that knows where the weed spot is.
He does not.
Now, I will admit, there have been times in some situations previous in my life, I did know who the person was, though, that would be able to tell you. But now I live in a place where it's legal anyway, and I don't even use it. So it is what it is. But, yeah, I just think that that's the biggest issue for me. I don't know about you. Is there something like that you've watched or seen that you thought would be cool to have some lead black characters in?
The one that jumps out just immediately for me was Friends. Where they
Ooh,
just it's like well, I'll say Friends and Seinfeld's guilty of this too. They both walked around in New York that just didn't appear to have any people of color in it for the
bro,
most
like
part.
for real.
One of the most culturally diverse cities in the world, unless you were hanging out with Jerry Seinfeld or Chandler Bing. It's just
Dude, I remember, and it took me for because because I didn't watch like Friends religiously. I saw maybe a couple of episodes per season. But I remember one day sitting around with my friends, and I'm like, "Isn't the show based in New York?" And they're like, "Yeah." Why do you ask? And I'm like, "How are there no people of color?" Like, I mean, because in New York's one of those cities that you can't look a single direction without seeing somebody of some different background. So it's
right.
weird that they're literally like walking the streets, they're going shopping, they're hanging out at like a coffee shop, whatever, and there's none. I'm like, how is that even possible? And comparatively, what's the hospital show Grey's Anatomy, right? It's supposedly based in like the Seattle Pacific Northwest, whatever area. And if you watch that show, there is a good representation of people, especially in the Northwest, because there's a reasonably large like
Yeah.
Asian population of multiple different backgrounds. But that shows up in the show. Like you have a whole
Shonda
cast.
Rhimes, lo and behold.
Yeah. You have a whole cast of people from different backgrounds. I'm like, this makes sense, right? You told me it's in a place and the people in the place look like they should. Right? Like if you told me it was in like, I don't know, like Indiana or something, I'd be like, yeah, all right, maybe there's a bunch of white folks hanging out at these
Yeah.
spots or whatever. But like, you can't tell me that in a major like metropolitan area. So I'm with you there. Like when shows have that level of popularity and they're based in a major city, yeah, you just need to showcase the diversity in the backgrounds or whatever, because that's part of what makes those cities great.
Right?
You know that you get to
And
go.
they did eventually put Aisha Tyler on there. By that point, like I just didn't watch Friends. It just wasn't a part of my regular thing. Even and it's not like they made her a main character. I think she was on there as a romantic interest for a couple of the characters, and then just but maybe had she become a regular member of the cast, because I do love Aisha Tyler. She is
Yeah,
funny and awesome. But yeah, it's
no, that's a good call out, dude.
because
That's
once
a good one.
I think once you well during that same time period back in the 90s, they took a survey of the top 10 favorite TV shows for black people and for white people. And the only show that made both lists was The Simpsons.
Oh, interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that, but Simpsons was damn popular though.
Right.
Like so, it doesn't surprise me, but I'm not
And
sure I
it's
would have
like,
guessed
the
it.
way they're drawn, like, what is a Simpsons ethnic background? I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, like you assume it's white, but like
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting, interesting. Well, all right, dude. Why don't you everybody where they can find you on social media, and we'll wrap this up.
All right. I am Brian Sonic on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Our family channel on YouTube is Alan's Ever After.
And you can find me just about everywhere at PowrDragn, PowrDragn on most social platforms. But as always, wherever you are listening or watching, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please remember to take care of yourselves and your family, and remember to be awesome, and most importantly, be awesome to each other.